to Earth Repair Live. This is the very first time that we're doing this live stream here. We've got a great interview for you all. We're going to have Brandon Maka'awa'awa, who is the Vice President of the nation of Hawaii. So I'm really thankful that you guys are. We already have 80 people watching, which this is awesome. So I'm really stoked. I'm looking at the chat here. We've got someone from Caracas, Venezuela, someone from Gladstone, Oregon. So thank you all so much for joining. I want to give a little background before we get into the interview with Brandon. So I went to Hawaii and visited the nation of Hawaii about 3 years ago. And me and my team, we filmed a mini documentary. It's the longest video that I've done on YouTube. It's about 28 minutes long, and it really goes into the whole story of the Ahupua'a. It goes deeper into the nation of Hawaii. So I encourage you to go back and look at that video. And I published that video through my work at Oregon State University. And now, when I make a video at Oregon State University, I am using state funds, and so I cannot make a call to action to actually help to support a project. But I've always wanted to actually use these videos as a method to make these projects happen on the ground. So this is the first video that we actually had funding from a different source, and we've made a call to action in this video to actualize this Ahupua'a. So that's through the Earth Repair Fund, and that's my new endeavor to try to make more of these videos that actually generate the funds to make some of these earth repair projects happen, really to accelerate them. Because what's happening on Puahonua Waimanalo at the nation of Hawaii, this thing is already in full momentum. It is happening. It is really, really expansive, and the Ahupua'a is being restored. So that's where we bring in our guest today, and we're going to hear a lot more about what's happening on the ground on Oahu. So welcome, Brandon Maka'awa'awa.
Hey, aloha, Andrew. Good morning
Good morning,
from
aloha.
Hawaii.
Yeah, it's kind of early there. It's about 7 a.m. in
Yeah,
Hawaii. Yeah.
yeah.
So Brandon, coming there 3 years ago and then coming back just recently, I was just astounded at what's been happening on the ground there. And we showed a few scenes in the video of the Aloha Aina day where you had, I believe, 250 volunteers showed up.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was incredibly impressive. Why don't you talk a little bit about the momentum that you've built there and about having all these people come onto the site and restoring this traditional system?
Yeah, I mean it's been amazing, the journey of Aloha Aina Day. Actually, we started Aloha Aina Day, and it was kind of like an organic thing that started back in September of 2023. And we've always had this vision of having volunteer days, and we kept saying, "Oh, we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it," and then, it just we didn't schedule it. That's one of the main things is like we just kind of said, you know what, I think we just got to schedule it, and we don't need to make it perfect, but let's plan for every last Saturday of the month we're gonna have a volunteer day. Come rain or sun, it's happening. And so once we set it at every last Saturday, I think that's when it all started. And I think our first Aloha Aina Day, we had about 16 people, and half of them was us. And so it started really small, but every month it increased. We started with 16. The next one we had 20, the next one we had 30, and then what really helped us set it off was an organization called Sustainable Coastlines Hawaii, who does a lot of beach cleanup. But then their mission is like, the beach cleanup actually starts upstream. So very much Ahupua'a driven. If we can't control what is happening in our streams up near the mountains, and then the beach cleanup is just, it's just like being in a treadmill. It's never gonna stop. So they started to volunteer, and they opened up their volunteer list to us. And then it just started rolling from there. But I think what keeps everybody coming on and staying with us, and what helped us grow to actually 200 plus volunteers every month, is we give people an opportunity to take on kuleana, which is the Hawaiian word for responsibility. And I think a lot of people, especially in Hawaii, um, they're searching for something like that. They're searching for what it is they can do to help contribute to some of the great work that is happening on the ground. Because our like we said before, our work is not funded by the state. We're a sovereign nation, so we have to self-fund a lot of things. And so I think people just believe in the work that was being done on the ground. I also think that they were in search for community and like-minded individuals. So um, we gather all of those like-minded individuals at the end, last Saturday of every month, and we let them participate in the kuleana, and the work that is being done on our lands. And I think people feel really fulfilled by that. They see progress every month. It's just a little bit more of the walls get built, a little bit more of the spaces get cleared. And I think once people get into the flow of those things, they get really encouraged and inspired to keep coming back.
Yeah. And I mean, I really saw that. It was amazing to see all this whole line of cars, everybody roll in, and then having the chain of rocks bringing the stones up from the stream, bringing them up. And then you had these people that were trained traditional wall builders, and they were
Yeah.
guiding. And so they were teaching people, and the stones were coming in. So there's so much progress that you guys are doing with just people's work and stones,
Yeah.
volunteer labor. And, we put this video out as a fundraiser. The idea is to accelerate the progress that you guys are already doing. So, how can we accelerate that? And, I read the questions on the YouTube comments, and some people are like, well, you already have all these volunteers. I mean, what do you even need money for? You should just be able to do it. Right. And so I
Yeah.
think it would be really good to clarify. I mean, so far, I mean, as of this recording, before I watched before we went to live stream, I think we'd raised 8 grand or something. I'd
Mm.
like to raise 10 million, but
Yeah.
but what are you guys gonna do with the funds? How could these funds actually accelerate this whole Ahupua'a restoration?
Yeah. The volunteers are great, when it comes to passing rocks, when it comes to weeding some of the lo'i patches, when it comes to just kind of like hacking down some of the smaller trees. But we're now going a little deeper into the invasive forest. And so now we're dealing with 100-foot plus trees, with very very it's going to take more skilled labor, is what I want to say, to kind of continue the restoration work, because a lot of these trees that are growing up through the terraces that we need to expand on are into the forest are much larger than what we've been dealing with right now. What we've been dealing with are the babies. Now we're tackling the adults. So we're going to bring in with the funds, actually trained arborists and trained tree climbers to actually help limb trees down, because we also gotta take into account that the terraces that we're restoring are anywhere from 800 to 1,000 years old. When these limbs get cut, from 100 feet above, and if they aren't done in a certain way, they'll drop and basically destroy these terraces, and thus destroying the work that we really rely on, which is our ancestral technology. Because without these terraces, I mean, it's very difficult to figure out geography and trajectory of water that was already figured out for us. We're trying to keep these terraces as much intact as we can, so that all we have to do is clear and turn on the water for this to go. And so it's going to take a lot of skilled labor to do that. I mean, the volunteers are great, and they'll continue helping us, because we're going to need people, just like how we needed people to take rocks up to the walls. We're going to need people to take all these little trees, pieces down into piles below. But we are going to need skilled labor, and unfortunately, skilled labor costs some money, and so the 8,000 is a good head start to getting some of these arborists in there and getting really into this forest and really like cracking open the nearly 100 plus terraces that are above us.
Yeah, that's one thing that we didn't mention in the video. It's a really important statistic, which is 99% of the plant species on the Hawaiian Islands are exotic invasive species. That the Hawaiian Islands are one of the locations on the planet where the most supplanting of native ecosystems has happened. So these huge trees are really, in the scope of history, a relatively newer introduction. And so that makes a lot of sense that you can't just go in there with some volunteers. And I mean, I've been in that forest, and there are some really large trees there. Um, I see someone commenting there in the chat says, which island? And I think this would be a great time right now to just hop on the Google Earth map for a second and show people where we're really talking about so they get a little bit of a perspective here. So you should be able to see that, folks, and hopefully my audio is coming through loud and clear. So this is Oahu. This is the most populous island on the Hawaiian island chain, right? You can see the whole of Hawaii right here. And this right here is Honolulu. This is the big city on Hawaii where the most amount of people live. You got Pearl Harbor's right here and lots of military installations. And so this is the dry side of the island. And then you've got this mountain range. And then right here, just basically over the mountains from Honolulu, and there's tunnels. You can drive through these mountains. It's really quick to get from here to here. Here's where you have the ideal watershed, the whole watershed of the Ahupua'a. And then we have Puahonua Waimanalo. This is the area right here where the village is. And as you saw in the video, Brandon was talking about how they gave you this land back there and they thought you're just going to get eaten up by the mosquitoes, right? And then coming up this slope, this is where the restoration's happening. And this is where Brandon's talking about 100 terraces that they could restore going all the way up to the base of these steep mountains. And then, of course, eventually heading down the Ahupua'a. So, all right, Raleigh, that sounds good. Let's go back to the interview there. So I just want to give a little bit of perspective. And I'd love to hear, Brandon, about what are some of the other impacts that have happened from this work. We saw a lot of stuff in the video. We saw the Aopu fish coming back into the ponds there. We saw some of the impacts that are happening on the people that are working on it. But I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit, like in your society, in your culture, what are some of the ripple effects that are happening from this work?
I think really what we're doing is nation building. You know, I think we're learning that, with a critical mass of people, we're able to do a lot of things in a quick amount of time. And we're learning about organizational skills because to organize and to mobilize, 200 plus people every last Saturday, it takes a certain type of skill set. And we're learning how to do that. And so um, I think it goes to like a lot of the work that we're doing, mobilizing our nation, bringing on citizens, and actually mobilizing work to be done, on the land. And I think it's allowed us to grow in that way. And so we're not as intimidated when there's a bunch of people. We kind of have a flow and an understanding of what we can and can't do, and also I think we've really expanded our community. there's more than, I would say 70% of our people that show up for Aloha Aina Days are non-Hawaiian, meaning they're non-indigenous, non-Kanaka people. And so it's really expanded our reach. Because sometimes a lot of this work we can get kind of caught in the echo chamber and just kind of preaching to the choir. And so now we're able to share our message about, what truly what our true vision for the nation of Hawaii is. I think a lot of people get kind of confused. They're afraid, sometimes. And so we show them that, this is nothing to be afraid of. This is something that really we're trying to develop, because we're not as self-sustaining as everybody thinks. Over 95% of our food is imported to Hawaii. We need to build sustainable food systems, and a lot of these food systems are covered up by invasive forests, and so instead of just let those things kind of get wasted by the indigenous forest that is growing and kind of just existing there, let's put these places back into production. And so we share that vision with people, and I think more and more people are being inspired, are finding where they can help us along the way. Now, we don't expect everybody to believe in our political views, and that's not what we're asking for. We're searching for the common denominator that makes us all one, makes our vision locked in with each other. We work with the U.S. military. Although we might be in conflict with the U.S. military, we found a project, which is the restoration of our stream that runs through that Ahupua'a that you see in the video. Well, that stream ends up at the base of Bellows Air Force Station. And right now, that stream is polluted by a bunch of different things, not from us, but downstream, in between us and Bellows, there's some things happening. And so we've been able to expand that relationship, with the military, because they see the work that is being done upstream, and they're asking us for help because they see the kind of progress we're making. And so we started to work with them in that aspect, monitoring the stream. So we're deploying sensors now, and we're doing all these kind of cool things. But again, if we're gonna dwell on the things that us in the military don't get along with and don't agree on, then we're not going to get anywhere. But if we can find those things that we have in common, this is where we do align with the military. They want to clean Puha Stream. We also want to clean Puha Stream. Let's stay there. Let's bring our focus into doing what we're called to do in these aspects, and let's save the rest for later on.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're really looking for the points of agreement with the people around you. And that's interesting. I didn't realize it's 70%. Someone in the chat said, "Can we translate any words we say in Hawaiian for people that don't understand?" So you said 70% were non-Kanaka. So Kanaka, yeah. How would you define Kanaka?
Kanaka is the indigenous name for Hawaiians. Yeah, it's so Kanaka in Hawaiian means person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really interesting that the majority of the people coming to volunteer are not indigenous Hawaiians. Yeah. And so, it's interesting, again, when I read the video comments, I get this wide lens of society, because you get everything, and sometimes I delete some things that are just, anytime someone says something that's just really in a bad spirit, I'll delete it. Something that's racist or just mean. So but definitely there's a feeling, it's almost like a zero-sum game where people are like, oh, if you're restoring something for the Hawaiians, then you're against non-Hawaiians or something like that. And it's just not the case at all, because most of the people that are doing this are non-Kanaka. Yeah, it's really interesting. So we've got a lot of questions starting to come up on the chat. Now, I do have a Patreon, and so when we do the upload of this video, We're going to upload till this point here, and then the rest is going to be available for our Patreon subscribers. So I'd encourage you to go to Patreon, type in Andrew Milson if you're watching this on the replay, and you can watch the entire video.